But can a nightclub maintain its vibe without a bouncer? If they could, why are they all hiring them? Right? Concept Synergy couldn't maintain the vibe without a bouncer, which turned out to be a private security company I interviewed in San Francisco because I was so surprised at finding a security company guarding a spiritual event of enlightened, shining beings, right? I said, why are you here? He said, well, I've been given a list of names and photographs, and I have to scan. I have to keep them out of the room with their friend, Lazaris, who's long gone beyond the sense of guru. I said, oh, apparently I wasn't on the list, so I went in. But what a joke, right? And Lazaris has poked so much fun, whether it was John Lennon's death, but not Penny's death. Penny's death was enlightened and all that, but John Lennon's death, oh, what a joke that was some form of transcendence or something like that. He was meant. So there's a tremendous amount of disintegration, chaos, hypocrisy. And I think the reason to be, for all this is just in the geometry, right? Lazaris techniques work and they don't work. Lazaris is more useful than a human and less useful than a human. Lazaris talks about grace with little or no effort at all, but doesn't mention the fact that it takes 10 times as much energy, often struggle and trial and error, to take the status quo in its mediocrity to a much better design with more excellence, right? Lazaris points out that it's easier to succeed than it is to fail, okay, but not that one might have to think 10 times more or work 10 times harder to develop the identity, the pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that differentiates oneself from the majority. And Lazaris has said that the majority is always wrong, in order to have grace, right? In other words, you can look at a little practical thing. I got tired of repeating myself with clients after 30 years as a landscape designer and installer. It's all the same questions. What does it cost? What should I do? Right. Is this enough water? Is this? They're all the same questions. I got tired of going over it all every single time, one person at a time, right? So how do you make that easier? Well, I wrote a book. And then rather than taking hours to go over all the stuff with each person, I take 30 seconds to give the book. I say, here, read this book. Then we'll talk about the few things that are unique to you that aren't in the book, that can't be put into any book because they're unique to you in this situation and your values. That's what we'll talk about. Because, so, yes, it is easier to succeed than it is to fail, meaning it's easier to give out this book than it is to do that over again. But it is harder to learn how to write a book and it is harder to write a book, and it takes more time up front to write a book, meaning I took a month to write this book. And I'd practiced on several other books, or it would have taken 3 months. So I took a month to design a system that was 10 times more efficient than the last system, and over time saved me time by working harder to do something different. Well, the same true with my phone service, right? I have to spend 30 minutes talking with a new potential client. Here's my schedule. These are my fees. This is this. This is this. Okay. That's 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes at the end of the day when I don't want to do that, right? So, now of course I could just not answer the phone, but that doesn't work, right? Someone calls, call me back, I want to talk with you about a landscape project. I know it's easier to succeed than it is to fail, and it's easier not to answer the telephone than to answer the telephone. So I'm not going to answer the telephone, right? It doesn't work, by the way. What does work is to have a message that contains, here's my fees, here's when I'm available, please go to the website and fill out this form. That works, but it takes time. You have to then design the form and put it out. And then it works to send people, here's the questionnaire to fill out, and these are the videos to watch. And then we'll set up an appointment. Well, now, I spent the 15 hours it took to set all that up. And now, because I spent more time intelligently, I'm spending less time. Right? Lazaris doesn't talk about that bit. With little or no effort at all, after a whole lot of effort. Right? Lazaris has said that to become truly wealthy, you need to invest money. You can't earn enough money to be rich, according to Lazaris. But he doesn't say that in order to have the money to invest, you need to not spend, i.e. struggle more up front, because it's a struggle when you want a Starbucks. To say, no. It would feel really great to just drive in and get a Starbucks right now, but I'm going to put that $6 a day into my investment account. In other words, in order to build a skyscraper, you have to build a deep foundation. In order to grow up and not blow over, you need roots. In order to have the stamina, the capacity to feel ecstatic joy, you need to be comfortable with pain, disappointment, hurt, fear. That's a full picture. That's a circle. My anthroposophical teachers that Lazaris was a bit too luciferic, too disembodied. I was talking about some of these issues to a non-Lazaris friend because, as I say, you can't bring this type of stuff up in the forum. And they said, oh, of course, those are channeled entities. You know, they're looking at a bird's eye view, you know, if you want a general direction, you know, here's the city and there's north, they're great for saying head north, right? That's where you want to go. They're great, right? They got the overview. It's not going to help you avoid the dead end, though. If you head due north in a city, you're going to come to a dead end very quickly, and it's not going to help you. You're going to run into a cul-de-sac. And the channel is going to say, go north, northward journey, right? Useless. What do? Start driving your car into the stone wall, right? Absolutely useless. You don't want a channel. You want a human being with a map. Turn left at this intersection, go here, don't go in rush hour, go up here, go there, then turn over here. And then, by the way, you don't have to go north. You could also stop and go south here, right? That would be nice, right? Multiple options, pros and cons. Far more useful than northward go. So, in other words, there are some situations where you want someone who's more, hopefully not wordless, right? Transcends all beings, right? It's the 5-MeO DMT experience. It's all absolutely perfect. It's all everything. It's one. It's everything. It's all exactly the way it needs to be. What? The secret of life was potatoes? Potatoes? That's 42? The answer to life, the universe, and everything? 42? Right? No, it's a little bit too abstract. Let's have, and even that state where it's all absolutely perfect and I understand it all. Wonderful. But what exactly do you understand? Everything. Well, one thing perhaps. I'm losing it, right? I can't. I just know, right? A few minutes ago, potatoes, they were the solution. I'm telling you, I can't say why. I understand French fries are fattening. It does get boring eating potatoes. Not sure how potatoes are going to solve the ozone layer, but, potatoes. I just knew it. I just knew they were the answer to life, the universe, and everything, right? And so you don't want that, right? It's all happening exactly as it is. Why disturb the neighborhood rapist, right? It's all part of the plan, right? So part of, so you've got all these different perspectives. A lower perspective, the neighbor rapist is wrong and must be stopped. Sometimes it's more useful. Then what is meant to be is meant to be. Or as Byron Katie would say, work on your story about it, right? That person shouldn't have raped me. I shouldn't have been raped. I shouldn't have raped them, right? Just fiddle around with it and let it go, right? Don't try and stop the rape. Just let it go, right? Well, sometimes that's useful. And sometimes it isn't. Sometimes that's just one more cockamamie, inappropriate cop-out for the outrage that's part of a necessary exhale to a compressed and frozen inhale that hasn't been released. Right? When? For whom? Right? That's where it comes back, right? It's all good from one point of view some of the time for some people. And it's all terrible some of the time from some points of view for some people. It's all absolutely perfect from one perspective, happening exactly as it needs to happen. It's all completely predetermined from one perspective. Inevitable. It's all completely unpredetermined. We're all completely free from another perspective, nothing is happening the way it should. It's all fucked up. The Orions shouldn't have come and interfered with the human animal. Why did the Pleiadians wait so long? What were they thinking? Right? Romans shouldn't have conquered this, the British, pompous, the rule of law and all this bullshit. A dual party system bound to fall apart, Why should you have democracy? The majority is always wrong, according to Lazaris. And they're the ones getting the president elected. It's madness. Education system, according to Lazaris, filled with domination, taking creative, intelligent children, destroying their productivity and self-awareness, property rights, more domination, controlled by our possessions. Domination is the opposite of dominion, according to Lazaris, right? Now, Lazaris says all this and then says they're not suggesting to dissolve property boundaries that are based on domination. Well, what are you suggesting then? Live in a dominating world from a place of dominion? It's not clear. I think that the most healthy approach to all this is, first of all, to understand that the breath is a circle. It is a circle and it is a cycle of inhale and out and exhale. That frozen energy for too long is destructive, just as unstructured dissolution and disintegration for too long is destructive to that which we identify with. That it all depends on whether you've just taken a big exhale, right? Relax, spend your money, enjoy your life is good advice if you've been a tightwad your whole life and have millions. It's terrible advice if you've got $60,000 in credit card debt and don't have a job. Right? It depends on which part of the cycle you're on, which means you actually have to see someone. And I like the definition of love that I created to understand the areas and ways in which I felt unloved and unloving. Love enough to care. Love is a flower. It opens. One movement leads to the other. Love is a breath. You have to inhale a little bit before you can inhale a little bit more. A little bit more. You have to inhale before you can exhale, right? It's a cycle, it's a process, it's a breath. Love enough to care. Care enough to take time. Take enough time to see. See enough to understand. Understand, by the way understanding works is mirror neurons. You assemble a pattern in your brain that seems to accurately predict the other person. In other words, you simulate them with mirror neurons. And when your mirror neurons actually accurately predict their facial expressions, their tones, their motivations, their behavior, then you've understood them. But what you've really understood is the mirror neuron patterns that have attempted to model who they are. You cannot understand someone without internalizing them in mirror neurons. When you internalize them, you become one with them. When you become one with them, you care. It's called empathy. So understand enough to empathize. Empathize enough to take action, to attune. And attune enough to succeed. Attune enough to succeed. Attunement is not just, I've attuned. No, it's a regulation. It's a relay of energy till you get in sync. Right? If you're dancing with someone, it's not just one step, I attuned with you and that's it. No, you stay in sync. You attune enough to succeed. And you succeed at supporting them, enabling them to meet their human needs. And loving someone comes after loving yourself. And this is how you love yourself. You meet your needs to survive, feel secure, develop self-esteem, understand your gifts, and develop them. Create abundance with those gifts by bringing them out into the world. And identify, become part of something, serve something more, something bigger than ourselves, a group, a community, an ecological challenge, the Great Mother, to serve something greater than ourselves. These are our human needs. And when we love someone enough to care enough to see enough to understand enough to empathize enough to attune, to take action, to attune successfully enough to succeed at supporting them in the fulfillment of their human needs independently. We love, and the virus of love spreads when they care enough about themselves to take enough time to see enough to understand enough to empathize, and meet their own human needs. The virus has taken root. And one of the most powerful patterns of energy, one of the most sustainable patterns, one of the most graceful, one of the most intelligent patterns begins to move through the species. It is a virus that, when caught, releases exponential amounts of gratitude, safety, wonder, trust, beauty, truth, and goodness inside and in the other. This, in turn, creates synergies between human beings that have never been seen in recorded history. Synergies based on competency. Adult love, which is that process, is competent. It's what works. That works for me. And to the extent that Lazaris takes enough time to care, cares enough to see, sees enough to understand, understands enough to empathize, empathize enough to attune. That's one of the areas that seems dubious. To understand enough to attune. And attune, to understand enough to empathize, and empathize enough to attune, and attune enough to facilitate success in the realization of our human needs. 95% of the Lazaris friends and community do not have a very high level of love and belonging, security, self-esteem, deep realization of their gifts, and a strong sense of being a part of something more that comes from abundance on the other side. I don't have a strong sense of love and belonging. I'm cresting the wave of security. My self-esteem is somewhat fragile. I'm still discovering and developing my gifts. I have yet to learn the grace of creating superabundance with those gifts. And I feel alienated most of the time from something bigger than me. I feel blocked by shame. It's just the best I can do with 40 years of conscious growth, with and without Lazaris. Right? And unfortunately, that's a lot better than many other people. We honor the circle and that idea and the probability field. Let's just say that half of the planet is moving towards where I'm at, and half of the planet is beyond it. Sounds about right? Where does Lazaris help with that? You know, I do feel Lazaris' empathy and love. I do feel that it's healthy and good that Lazaris takes time to talk and help me understand things and possibly understand. It's hard to say without more dialogue. Lazaris can say that I'm here in this lifetime to deal with loneliness very specifically. But Lazaris can't take the time to explain how that works or what that means or what dealing with loneliness specifically would be defined by. Just being lonely one's whole life? Check. Or what? What does that mean? Try to be more lonely, pay attention to loneliness. It's apparently a life focus. Dealing with loneliness. Why? Is it a focus that can be changed? How? Right? Yeah. I didn't leave my one session one-on-one with Lazaris feeling more focused, calm, clear. I left feeling more nervous and anxious. So I didn't get to talk all that much. It was only 30 minutes. Can you really understand someone in 30 minutes? I certainly didn't feel understood and didn't understand myself or Lazaris in 30 minutes. And for an entity that has an unlimited amount of time, it's kind of a short amount of time to try and understand what that means. Now, Lazaris advises in relationships that you not only express difficult feelings to someone else, but you make and allow the time necessary to make sure they feel okay with what they've heard. But I didn't feel okay with what I heard. And Lazaris didn't allocate the necessary time. Human beings have done that to some degree. And so, to some degree, I feel some sense of love and belonging. But it's pretty low, probably 10% over optimal, relative to optimal. And I understand that if it takes a month in time off work to write a book with a fair amount of practice so that I can save hours for the rest of my life not having to repeat myself, but just giving a book, I understand that to go from 10% love and belonging to 100% love and belonging, a tenfold increase, it's going to take a lot more time, a lot more skill, a lot more excellence to realize those goals. And so I'm going into this not with little or no extra effort at all, not trying to vilify struggle, but rather understanding that while it may be easier to succeed than it is to fail, it is harder to reinvent one's identity from one that is reaching a certain level of success and failure to one that is succeeding 10 times more than it is to allow the momentum of attachment to the status quo to continue. I understand that as well. And so I think there's about half of reality that Lazaris is underplaying, perhaps in the belief that people are in a state of exhale and need to inhale. So he's emphasizing, and whatever you emphasize, it's destructive or constructive depending on which point of the circle it is, right? What I mean by that is, let's just say that we're defining forward momentum as good, and the wheel has to turn in this direction for good to be accomplished. And the point that we're referencing is right here. If we're talking about this point, then we would we need to push this wheel down. We need to do whatever it takes to move this point of the wheel down. But if we're trying to achieve the same forward momentum, and instead of this point, we're dealing with this point, then to tell someone to go down when this wheel is spinning is to freeze the wheel and stop. It's to arrest life. We instead need to tell the person to go up, and then down, and then up. We need to understand the complex relationship between the positive and the negative, between work and laziness, or work and rest. If you work really, really hard and really, really smart, you can make a lot of money and not work at all and have things be very easy. If you don't work at all on your thoughts, on your behavior, you can have a really, really hard life from all of that ease. They tend to go hand in hand. The negative ego and the positive ego, whatever you break, if you have a true polarity, they work as a couple. You don't get a man without woman. You don't get a woman without a man, right? Hello, right? You need two parts of the whole to create the synergy that is life. So a lot of, what growth acceleration looks like is, first of all, you have to get attuned to where you are in the inhale-exhale cycle. And there are many inhales and exhales that are going on simultaneously, right? You've got the make money, spend money cycle. You've got the work-sleep cycle. You've got the inner and outer cycle, right? I've got the sit and need to move around cycle, right? I've been sitting for too long. I want to move around, right? My body is telling me I'm not honoring the breath, right? I need to move around. So that's what I'm going to do. Thanks for being there.